Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I condemn any illegal activity. I always have, left or right. Secondly, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and the Attorney General for the Washington, D.C. Attorney General, Karl Racine, have both presumed President Trump to be innocent of criminal charges. They have not accused President Trump of committing a crime. They are the only two individuals in this country and on this planet who could possibly have, not only the evidence, but they are directly responsible from a legal perspective of what goes on. They're directly responsible for prosecuting anyone who committed illegal acts in Washington, D.C. several days back. They have not called for President Trump to be charged with any crime. They have not stated that President Trump broke any legal statutes. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser hasn't even brought up President Trump's involvement. Attorney General Karl Racine has stated that he should be investigated to see what his involvement was, what President Trump's involvement was. How high up does it go? That's what he was saying. But this is an extremely important segment. Share this with anyone who thinks that President Trump compelled people or told people to engage in horrendous conduct. This is a very important segment defending the president. And it's just basic logic. You don't have to be Alan Dershowitz or a legal scholar to realize that there are two individuals that can right now state categorically President Trump committed a crime. Or they're the only two individuals on this planet or in this country with the legal jurisdiction or the legal, they're the only two people, the D.C. Mayor and the Attorney General, and the D.C. Attorney General, the only two people who have the ability to state categorically at this moment whether Trump committed a crime. And President Trump did not. They are not saying that he has. They are not even alluding to President Trump having committed any type of illegal act. And yet the entire planet is saying that he engaged in this and that, and it's truth now to so many people, except it's not the truth. It's not how the D.C. Mayor and Attorney General feel. Why? Hit subscribe to this channel. Get this segment viral. It's extremely important. This is a question that everyone on Twitter needs to answer. I'm not on Twitter. Deactivate your Twitter account. I've explained that President Trump has single-handedly caused Twitter, will single-handedly cause Twitter in a couple of years to go bankrupt. But if indeed President Trump compelled people, his words, gave people the motivation to commit these atrocious acts, why isn't the D.C. Mayor calling for justice? Why isn't the Attorney General? If you want to say, well, the mayor has more important things or other things, there's a situational update that Mayor Muriel Bowser released Thursday, January 7th, 2021. Okay, so there's no mention here of President Trump. It's like a PowerPoint presentation, and there's no mention here of President Trump. Well, the only mention is he must be held accountable. But there's no mention, it's not just the president who must be held accountable. So too must, the people who, then she puts the definition of a certain criminal act, but she does not say that President Trump committed this act. So there's no mention of Trump committing any act. They're still within this. They're assuming President Trump's, the assumption is that President Trump is innocent. However, he might have committed or the PowerPoint is saying this was an unprecedented, on our democracy by the United States president, and he must be held accountable. But she's not saying, there's no mention of President Trump committing a criminal act. There's no categorical statement he committed a criminal act. Why not? Because he didn't. Because he didn't tell people to do anything. So she put a tweet, like 4 different tweets, and that's it. And that's it. And there's no other mention of President Trump other than those tweets. There's no statement that President Trump committed these crimes or potentially committed these crimes. There's no actual statement here. You can look at the situational report. And that's just for January 7th. You can look at other January 8th. Everything else has been about the pandemic. The only thing that the mayor of D.C., she didn't accuse Trump of anything. The only thing she put in the PowerPoint presentation on January 7th situational report were tweets of President Trump and a statement saying he must be held accountable, but not for any specific act. Then she puts the definition of a certain criminal act, but she doesn't say that President Trump committed this act. But again, see, the presumption there is that he's innocent of this. The political statement here is, well, let's investigate whether or not he's innocent, but as of right now, we don't have evidence to claim in a categorical manner that he committed this act or that he incited or compelled people. Now, this is Fox News. Giuliani Trump Jr. may be investigated over role in Capitol riot, D.C. Attorney General suggests. But the D.C. Attorney General, like Mayor Muriel Bowser, did not state that he committed a criminal act. My point to you is the following. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody on the planet, well, I should say everybody on the left, political discourse in this country has revolved around the prevailing mentality in Washington, D.C., or the prevailing mentality in political media now is that Trump committed a crime, he should be impeached. His words led to all of this, but they're not taking him. Nobody's even thinking of accusing him within a court of law. Why haven't the mayor of D.C. and the Attorney General of D.C. stated that we're going to go after President Trump in a court of law? The Attorney General of D.C. was taking Trump to court for, I believe, the emoluments clause. So, I think, so there's a lawsuit, the emoluments lawsuit, that Attorney General Carl Racine is so they're already taking Trump to court for that. My point is the following. There is only hyperbole. There is only hyperbole now within American discourse, within the jury and executioner, the judge, jury, and executioner in American politics now is social media sentiment and a frenzy that exists online. This hysteria where now people are banned. So the worst, what happened at the Capitol was an unmitigated disaster for President Trump. An unmitigated catastrophe. For the lives lost, that's the main thing. You had 5 lives lost. You gained absolutely nothing politically. So the lives lost is the main issue. That's the main issue. That's the main issue, of course. Was it a smart thing to even have a January 6th, like, the protests? No, it wasn't actually. In hindsight, it was, and I was thinking, my God, like, I mean, it just wasn't a smart thing. I didn't talk about it, but I was thinking, like, nothing really good is going to come from this. But I could never imagine what took place. But what took place had zero political strategy, and it was an unmitigated catastrophe from a political sense. It led to banning President Trump, banning a parlor being kicked. There is now complete and utter suppression of thought. All because Democrats, a great many Republicans, so I mean, everybody from Pence to McConnell, they're all silent now, which adds to the fury and the frenzy and the irrational, absurd claims that Trump is directly responsible when we had months where $1 billion to $2 billion in insurance claims from property damage took place, and you had 19 lives lost. You have people losing their lives, it being recorded. David Dorn was his life was taken, and I mean, just for defending the business, this is a police captain, a black man. His life was taken, and Democrats and media, they don't. The lives taken and the lives lost during 5 or 6 months of never-ending police clashes that also had the most egregious and horrendous statements and rhetoric from the left. That's all forgotten now. What happened the other day now is the excuse to ban and silence and suppress and go after. They want to erase President Trump from history because of this. It was a complete catastrophe from a political sense. Mainly the loss of life is the main thing. That's the main thing. But it was the absolute worst political thing that could ever have taken place now. They wanted to erase President Trump from history prior to this. Now they've created this world where Trump is legally responsible. But if he's legally responsible, why isn't the mayor of D.C. or the attorney general of D.C., why aren't they making a legal case against Trump? Because he's not legally responsible. That's the point of this segment, ladies and gentlemen. That's the point of this segment. And it's in the segment, this segment should be shared. And if I'm wrong, from a legal sense, if there's a Democrat out there, or liberal, or somebody who just doesn't like Trump, and I'm wrong, and there's a legal basis for President Trump to be charged with crimes, then please explain why the mayor and the attorney general of D.C. haven't stated categorically that Trump committed these crimes. They haven't stated this categorically because they know that there's no legal basis to make such a statement. He did not tell those people to do this. The rhetoric was heated, but Trump never imagined, it was never his intent, which is the legal, what they have to prove from a legal perspective. It was never Trump's intent to create this havoc. Unfortunately, the chaos took place. It was never the intent of people who went to the Capitol to lose anyone's life, to create a loss of life. Unfortunately, that happened. From a legal perspective, the fact that there was no intent in either case erases certain legal, or undermines the legal basis of these claims against President Trump, that he broke certain statutes because they require the intent. And I can't even talk about the different words because of the algorithm, but they require the intent. There was no intent for President Trump. It was a political misstep in every single way, shape, and form, even with President Trump. But his intent wasn't to compel people or incite anyone to do that. The intent of the people who did that wasn't for a loss of for people to lose their lives. 4 of the 5, one Capitol policeman, and 4 others who were supporters of President Trump lost their lives. Those people didn't go in with the intent to lose their lives. And the loss of the policeman's life's horrendous. That should never have taken place, and I condemn that categorically. However, you look at the Democrats now. Do you want to know how many ambushes that law enforcement had to deal with in the past 5 or 6 months in different cities within the country? Was there any rhetoric from the left? You want to know how many people were assaulted by left-leaning protesters? And would you then link those assaults to what Maxine Waters stated, where she literally stated to get into the faces of people? Other lawmakers were saying the same thing on the left. If you're going to use a legal standard against President Trump, are you going to use those legal standards against Democrats when their words potentially lead to police buildings being set ablaze? This is madness. This is pure madness, what's taking place. It was horrendous what took place in D.C. I agree with that. But they're taking advantage from a political perspective. They're using words like criminal, sociopath, the T word that I'm not going to use because of the algorithm. They're going at it because they've encapsulated 4 years of Trump contempt into the last 10 days now. But the D.C. mayor and the Attorney General of D.C. don't share the same legal sentiment. They have not accused Trump of specific crimes, and they're the ones who could accuse Trump, formally accuse Trump, simply putting tweets up and then the definition of a specific crime. It's not a formal accusation; it's a political statement. So, and that's within a PowerPoint. I don't believe she made the statement or even made any statement that he committed a crime. This is important now because you have journalists. This is also part of the myth around these fantasies around President Trump. Trump is to blame for the pandemic. Trump is to blame for what took place the other day. Trump is to blame for They say that Trump praised 1930s, 1940s Germans. He did not, within the C-SPAN quote. So he actually condemned them within the C-SPAN quote. He's condemned hate and bigotry like 10, 12 times during his presidency. It's never enough. And he did not. The problem is the following. Unfortunately, what happened with President Trump and what's taking place the past couple of months is an inability to communicate. It's not actually Trump's fault. The people around him were not able to communicate. I said a month back, I said these people, whether it's Giuliani or Jenna Ellis or anyone around Trump, need to go on Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, Anthony Bryan Logan, Brandon Tatum, all the biggest YouTube channel, Mark Dice, Steven Crowder, every major YouTube channel that supports President Trump or that is open to President Trump's viewpoint. The Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro, even the people who might not be the ardent Trump supporters, but at least conservatives. You had that resource, but you didn't do it. I told you to do it. Instead, Giuliani went to a press conference and It's Just for Men melted. Okay, it was the spray. It wasn't the Just for Men. If it was Just for Men, it wouldn't have melted. It was the spray. Fine. At least he didn't pass gas on national television like Eric Swalwell, who had a romantic relationship with an intelligence operative. But again, you're never... If Republicans, the questions that needed to be answered, or the dialogue that needed to happen, where there were questions about November that needed to happen, that didn't happen because there was no communication It was, oh, no, it never happened. And there was a press. Every time that President Trump's legal team tried to convey a message, it got ripped apart and diluted and torn apart by media. You could have gone to the top, like, Joe Rogan or Tim Pool. You could have gone to those channels, Mark Dice, Steven Crowder, because Giuliani went on Steven Crowder with Caligula's laptop, and that worked. You could have done those. So you could have thought outside the box. Instead, you had your press conference, and then it was on Twitter. But see, again, like they spent 4 years undermining the 2016 November of 2016 in every way, shape, and form. They called Trump an illegitimate president. That's all they did. And then they said, well, how dare you do that to us? The difference, though, is they had baseless claims, but they had media backing them up. We had no media backing us up. We had claims without direct evidence that needed to be investigated. Now there's not going to be, there probably won't be any investigations now. President Trump might not pardon Julian Assange, although I hope he does. He's now basically shackled in terms of what he can do. He's now facing impeachment. It was a complete disaster and catastrophe, my God almighty, from a political perspective. You have voices banned now. You have parlors. If they're tightening the ice, they wanted to silence President Trump for such a long time, and they're tightening the vice now, and they're going beyond President Trump. And it was because of this, and they're turning this into something it's not. And my point is, the mayor of D.C. and the attorney general of D.C. have not leveled any charges at President Trump. That's because no charges will ever be leveled. And if they are, he'll never be prosecuted, because he didn't have the intent, nor did he actually state for anyone to do anything. Media for 4 years have viewed 74 million supporters of President Trump as mindless, invisible entities, not human beings that voted for President Trump for specific reasons, to reverse U.S. foreign policy, to bring Americans home, like I voted for President Trump. Okay, the Democrats don't care about that. They want to leave Americans, off into counterinsurgency conflicts forever. There are legitimate reasons to vote for President Trump, and there are legitimate reasons to investigate certain allegations that he's made. But now everything is, they're tightening the vice. They're going ahead and just squeezing, and it's like, is there anyone defending President Trump saying, yes, he did not incite or compel or tell anyone to do anything? If you're going to use that standard, then go after the Democrats whose rhetoric potentially led to atrocities and horrors that took place the past 5 to 6 months. Portland was just ongoing. Seattle. These were caught on video, people. If you look at Andy Ngo, Ian Miles Chong, and Tim Pool, it was caught on video. They have courageously reported on all of this stuff. Media doesn't care. CNN said fire but peacefully. Had a building set ablaze behind them. But ladies and gentlemen, there's no political discourse anymore, which is why you have to subscribe to this channel. Tell your friends about this channel. The DC mayor and the attorney general could easily push for charges against President Trump. They haven't. The reason that's important is because in the minds of every liberal journalist, it's redundant. Almost every journalist is a liberal. And maybe a small percentage of political media is conservative. And of that percentage, a smaller percentage supports President Trump. Even though Trump has 90% approval rating within the Republican Party, and even if it's knocked down to 85 or 86%, that's still good. That's still amazing. But the rest of the political world, not just in this country but in other countries, are claiming that he committed crimes, and there's no debate. And I want to know, from a legal perspective, and maybe I'm wrong, why haven't the mayor of D.C. and the attorney general? Why haven't the mayor of D.C. and the attorney general formally accused President Trump, either in a court of law or in a political statement, formally accused him of committing crimes leading to what happened? Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe. There has to be some level of rational thought in this country. And Democrats think that they've won, and now they're running up the score. This is like, the Miami Hurricanes in the 90s. 50 points, 60 points. They're running up the score, people. Okay? That message board was a dangerous message board. And I told you in 2018, I said, delete your Twitter account. And also, the QAnon thing was the most dangerous thing, most horrible thing possible. I told you this in 2018. And I debated Jordan Sather. It's on my website, hagoodman.com. You can read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Federalist, The Daily Caller. I told you. And now we're dealing with this. I mean, the next 10 days is going to be like 10 years. And nobody is countering the narrative. No, yet again, they're blaming Trump for everything. There's no question. There's no rational thought. There's no discourse. There's no semblance of logic or reason. It's just pure hysteria by fanatics and zealots. Any defense of Trump is now blasphemy. You're a heretic. They've turned this into a religion. They've turned hating Trump into a religion. It is their religion. They worship it. And what they did, what people did a couple days ago in D.C., it was what Democrats have been waiting for. It was a political, the catastrophe and the loss of life is the main thing. But from a political perspective, it is it was an unmitigated disaster, debacle, tragedy, from every perspective. Now there's no Parler. Now Trump is banned off of Twitter. Now now they're just like, there's no rhyme or reason. It's just, he's saying something and we know it's going to compel people to do something bad. So it's like, what? Anyway, give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. From a legal perspective, why aren't the D.C. Attorney General and mayor going after President Trump? And the fact that they're not, from a legal perspective, points to the obvious fact that he is not culpable for what people do. There is a First Amendment that exists in this country, people. It still kind of exists. Let's see if it continues. Give me your thoughts below. Thanks so much. Hit subscribe.